What if I told you that very little in your life is truly random? That even the moments that felt pointless or unfair are connected to something larger than you could see at the time. That heartbreak can shape the heart. That an unexpected phone call can arrive at the exact moment you needed to hear a human voice. That certain people enter your life and leave again, and somehow you are not the same afterward. Right now, wherever you are listening, there is a reason you are here. Maybe it is 3 a.m. in the morning and sleep will not come. Maybe you are lying in the dark with a busy mind. Maybe you are driving to work, feeling a little disconnected. Maybe you are sitting quietly somewhere, needing a moment of calm. A calm mind, a softer night. However you arrived, you arrived. If it feels right, you can share in the comments where you are listening from. There is something quietly comforting in realizing we are scattered across the world, living different lives, yet drawn to the same simple wisdom and the same need for deep sleep and peace. Now, make yourself comfortable. Pull a soft blanket closer. Dim the lights if you can. Let the room become gentle. Let your shoulders drop. Let your face soften. If you are in bed, allow your body to become heavy, supported completely. For the next 3 hours, let yourself be carried by a calm Zen sleep story, by old teachings that have helped restless minds settle for more than 2,000 years. Not as rules, not as pressure, just as a steady rhythm, like a river moving through the night. The Buddha discovered something that changes how we look at life. What we call coincidence is often an intricate web of causes and effects. One thing leads to another. A small choice becomes a turn in the road. A single meeting becomes a new chapter. A loss becomes a doorway. A delay becomes protection. A beginning appears where you thought there was only an ending. This does not mean your struggles were deserved. It does not mean pain was sent to you on purpose. It simply means your life is not isolated. Your joys are not accidents. Your hardships are not meaningless. They are part of a living pattern, still unfolding, still shaping you, still guiding you toward greater understanding, one moment at a time. Buddhism teaches that every moment holds a hidden gift. Sometimes the gift is obvious. Sometimes it arrives wrapped in difficulty. And sometimes the gift is simply this, that you are here now, breathing, listening, giving yourself permission to rest. Tonight, you do not have to figure anything out. You do not have to force sleep. You only have to let this moment be what it is, and allow the mind to soften into quiet. Tonight, we are going to unwrap those gifts together, slowly, the way you would unwrap something fragile and precious. Right now, as you listen, your body is already changing. In the time it takes you to hear a few sentences, countless cells have done their quiet work of ending and beginning again. Your skin is shedding invisible pieces. Your thoughts shift from one shape to another. Even your breath, the one you just took, is not the same as the last one. Nothing in existence stays perfectly still. The chair you are sitting on is made of atoms in motion. The earth beneath you is turning through space. The air is moving. The heartbeat is moving. Life is moving. Even when it feels like nothing is happening, something is happening. And yet we fight this truth every day. We want the good days to last forever. We want the happiest moments to stay exactly the same. We want our children to remain small, safe, and innocent. We want our bodies to stay young and strong. We want our relationships to feel exactly like they did in the early days, when everything felt effortless and bright. But things change. They always change. And when they change, the mind often tightens, as if it could hold the world still through sheer force. Buddhism names this clearly. Life contains pain. Life contains loss. Life contains change. And much of the suffering we experience is not only from change itself, but from resisting what cannot be stopped. It is like demanding that a river stand still. Imagine trying to hold water in your cupped hands. The tighter you squeeze, the faster it slips through your fingers. The more desperate you become to keep it, the more you lose. This is what we do with everything we love. But water was never meant to be held. It was meant to flow. Long ago, the Buddha sat beneath a tree and watched the world with steady eyes. He watched flowers bloom and wilt. He watched clouds form and dissolve. He watched his own thoughts arise and pass away like waves on the surface of the ocean. And he understood something that changes the way we live. All conditioned things are impermanent. This was not a gloomy realization. It was liberating, because once you stop arguing with impermanence, you stop exhausting yourself against reality. Think about a river for a moment. Have you ever sat beside one and truly watched it? The water does not fight its banks. It does not complain about stones. It does not stop and hold a meeting with the boulder in its path. When the river meets an obstacle, it continues. It curves. It finds another way. It carves a channel. It adapts. It stays a river even as it changes direction. In fact, the places where it bends are often the places most beautiful to look at. The curves create valleys. The curves create canyons. The curves create landscapes that people travel far to see. A river teaches something simple. Obstacles are not always here to stop you. Sometimes they are here to change the shape of your path. What if you could move like water? What if, instead of breaking yourself against the rocks in your life, you learned to flow around them with grace? What if you did not become smaller when life changed direction? What if you became deeper? The seasons understand this perfectly. Autumn does not cling to summer. Trees do not panic when winter approaches. They do not glue their leaves back on. They let go. They release. They trust the cycle. And because they surrender to what is natural, they survive. They return. They bloom again. But humans often struggle with this. We reach an autumn season in life and we panic. A relationship changes, and we beg it to become what it used to be. A job ends, and we feel as if identity itself has been taken. A body changes, and we treat it like betrayal. We feel the leaves of an old life falling away, and we grab at them, trying to tape them back onto branches that are already moving on. We fight the seasons of our existence instead of learning how to live through them. A woman once told me about losing her job at 52. For months, she battled the change. She applied for the same kind of work again and again, trying to recreate what had ended. She was exhausted. She was afraid. She was trying to force spring flowers to bloom in winter. Then one day, she sat in her garden and watched a tree dropping leaves, and something in her settled. The tree was not dying. The tree was preparing. The tree was making space. In that moment, she stopped fighting her autumn and began preparing for her spring. 6 months later, she started the small business she had dreamed about for years, but never had the courage to begin. The loss that felt like an ending became the beginning of a life that fit her better. But she could only see it when she stopped resisting and started flowing. Your body already understands this truth. Cells do not mourn when they are replaced. Hair does not grieve when it falls out and grows back. Skin does not resist when it sheds and renews itself. The body changes constantly, and the body is not offended by it. So why does the mind fight what the body knows is natural? Because the mind tells stories. The mind takes the flowing river of experience and tries to build permanent structures on its banks. It labels moments good and bad. Then it demands that the good moments stay forever. It tries to erase the bad moments entirely. But rivers do not recognize our labels. They simply flow. The Buddha taught that suffering grows from attachment, from the desperate need to make permanent what is temporary. We attach to people. We attach to situations. We attach to emotions. We attach to identities. We build happiness on sand, and then we are shocked when life moves like water and the foundation shifts. But here is the part that changes everything. When you truly understand impermanence, you do not love less, you love more. When you know that this moment with your child will never repeat in exactly the same way, the moment becomes more precious. When you know this conversation with a friend is not guaranteed, you listen differently. When you know the sunset will fade, you actually look at it. Impermanence does not remove meaning. It gives meaning its beauty and its urgency. A master calligrapher spends years learning to paint characters with ink and brush. Each stroke is deliberate. Each line is alive. The master knows the ink will fade. The paper will age. Nothing in that artwork will last forever. Does that make the art meaningless? No. It makes each stroke sacred. Your life is like that calligraphy. Each day is a brushstroke. Each choice is a line of ink. Each relationship is a flowing mark across the paper of time. Nothing lasts forever. And because of that, everything matters. When you stop fighting the flow and start moving with it, something changes inside. You begin to see that change is not your enemy. Change is a teacher. Change is a liberator. Every ending creates space. Every loss clears room for something you cannot yet see. The river does not mourn the bank it left behind. It moves forward into new landscapes. The tree does not grieve its fallen leaves. It trusts the seasons. And you can learn to dance with change instead of wrestling it. This does not mean you become passive. Rivers are not weak. Rivers move mountains. Rivers carve canyons. Rivers reshape the earth. But they do it through steady movement, not through resistance. You can be like water, soft enough to find a path, strong enough to shape your life over time. Right now, something in your life is changing. Maybe it is obvious. A relationship shifting, a move, a job changing, a chapter ending. Maybe it is subtle, your interest evolving, your perspective widening, your heart opening in small ways you cannot fully name. Whatever it is, you have a choice. You can fight the current and exhaust yourself, or you can breathe, relax your grip, and let the river carry you toward a place you cannot yet see. The Buddha's insight echoes quietly through all of this. All conditioned things are impermanent. That means your fear is temporary, your confusion is temporary, your suffering is temporary. And it also means your success is temporary. Your youth is temporary. Your joy is temporary. This is not a tragedy. This is the most beautiful truth, because it wakes you up. When you feel impermanence in your bones, you stop taking life for granted. You stop postponing love. You stop waiting for someday. You begin showing up. You love with a whole heart, because you know this moment is not coming back in the same way. The river keeps flowing, the seasons keep turning, your cells keep changing, and you get to choose whether you will flow with this magnificent rhythm or spend your energy fighting what will not stop. Everything changes. This is one of the first laws of life, and yet, within all that change, there is something steady, the awareness that notices the flowing, the presence that watches the river, the quiet witness that remains while everything else shifts. That presence is here now. And tonight, in this gentle Zen sleep story, you can let the mind loosen and the body rest inside that steadiness. Now listen closely, because this is where the teaching deepens. What if I told you that nothing you do disappears into thin air? Every word you speak, every thought you think, every gesture you make, it creates movement, like dropping a stone into a still lake. Your actions send ripples outward. This is karma, and it is often misunderstood. Some people imagine karma as a cosmic scorecard, a judge in the sky rewarding saints and punishing sinners. They picture a universe keeping receipts and handing out verdicts. But karma is not divine judgment. Karma is natural law. Karma is cause and effect, as natural as gravity. When you drop something, it falls. When you plant a seed, something grows. When you act, something moves outward. The universe does not label it good or bad. It simply responds. Picture a mountain lake on a calm morning. The surface is smooth like glass. It reflects the trees and sky with clear stillness. Now imagine you pick up a small stone. You hold it in your palm. For a moment, everything is quiet. Then you release it. The stone breaks the surface with a soft splash. Immediately, ripples spread outward. The first ripple is small, close to where the stone fell. Then a second ripple forms, wider. Then a third. And soon, those waves travel across the lake, reaching shores you cannot even see from where you stand. The stone disappears beneath the surface, but the effect continues. The ripples touch distant edges. They nudge floating leaves. They move around reeds. They meet other ripples from other stones thrown on other days. One small action creates an endless chain of consequences. Your life works the same way. Every action you take is a stone dropped into the lake of existence. Every word is a ripple. Every gesture is a wave. And just like the ripples on water, the results travel beyond what you can track. Here is where karma becomes even more personal. It is not only actions. Thoughts create ripples too. The Buddha taught that everything begins in the mind. Before you speak, you think. Before you act, you choose. Before anything appears in the world, it appears in consciousness first. Your thoughts are the first ripples. They set everything else in motion. Think of the last time you felt angry. Maybe someone cut you off in traffic. Maybe someone spoke sharply. Maybe a message felt cold. Notice what happened first. Angry thoughts came before angry words. Resentment formed before any action. And even if you never spoke a word, those thoughts already changed something. They tightened your chest. They changed your expression. They shifted your energy. They affected how you moved through the rest of your day. That is mental karma. A man once told me about his morning commute. Every day he drove the same route, and every day the traffic frustrated him. He would grip the steering wheel, filling his mind with anger at other drivers. By the time he arrived at work, he was already tense. His voice was sharper. His patience was thinner. Conversations felt heavier. The mood spread. Even at home, his family received the residue of that tension. One morning, he tried a different approach. The traffic was the same, but he chose not to fight it in his mind. He practiced gratitude, simple gratitude, for a working car, for a job, for being alive on that particular morning. Nothing external changed. Everything internal changed. He arrived calmer. His colleagues felt it. The tone of the day shifted. Small ripples, wide effects. This is why Buddhism pays so much attention to the mind, because the mind sets the direction. When you think with fear, you notice threats everywhere. When you think with bitterness, you interpret everything as disrespect. When you think with gratitude, you see what is working. When you think with compassion, you find chances to help. Your mind shapes what you notice. What you notice shapes how you act. And how you act shapes what happens next. Karma does not move in a straight line, like a simple transaction. It is not good deed equals good result. Life is more complex and more beautiful than that. Sometimes ripples take years to return. Sometimes they return transformed. Sometimes they circle far away, touching lives you will never see, before they come back to you through a different door. Think of a kindness you offered once without expecting anything back. Maybe you helped a stranger. Maybe you listened to a friend. Maybe you offered patience to someone having a hard day. And think of a time unexpected kindness found you when you needed it most. It may have come from someone you did not even know. These moments feel like mystery, but they are also ripples. The Buddha spoke of karma in 3 ways. Karma of body, the actions you take. Karma of speech, the words you choose. Karma of mind, the intentions and thoughts beneath it all. All 3 matter. But mind karma is the deepest because it shapes the other 2. 2 people can do the same outward action, and the ripples can be completely different. 2 people give money to someone in need. One gives with resentment, feeling forced, feeling deprived. The other gives with warmth, grateful for the chance to help. The action looks identical. The inner ripple is not. Intention changes everything. This is why Buddhist practice is not about becoming perfect. It is about becoming aware. It is about seeing your own mind clearly, noticing the thought before it becomes speech, noticing the intention before it becomes action, and choosing, gently, what kind of ripples you want to send. Some people fear that thinking about karma will make them calculating. They worry they will become kind only to get something back. But true understanding does the opposite. When you see how connected everything is, you realize helping others and helping yourself are not separate actions. When you brighten the world, you brighten your own mind. When you poison the world, you poison your own heart first. Compassion becomes natural, not strategic. A teacher once asked her students to watch their ripples for 1 day. Not big dramatic actions, just the subtle ones. Their mood at breakfast, their tone at work, their patience in traffic, their presence with the cashier at the store. They were surprised at how much power they had. A small kindness changed a conversation. A small irritation ruined a moment. A small act of attention made someone feel seen. This is real power, quiet power, and you have it, even now. The quality of attention you bring to this moment is a ripple. The intention you hold, even softly, shapes the next moment. This is both humbling and freeing, because it means every moment matters, and it also means every moment is a new beginning. Karma is not fatalism. It is not saying everything is fixed and you cannot change. Karma is saying your past has shaped your present, yes, but your present is shaping your future. Every moment is a fresh stone in your hand. You cannot pull back the stones you already threw, but you can choose the next one. You can choose what you send into the lake from here, and you do not need to become tense about it. Trying to control every ripple is impossible. Trying to control every thought is exhausting. Instead, focus on the direction of the heart. What do you want to grow? Kindness, patience, clarity, a calmer mind, a quieter life. This is how you change course, not by forcing, by choosing again and again to soften instead of harden, to breathe instead of brace, to respond instead of react. Now, imagine that still lake again. You stand at the edge with a handful of smooth stones. Each stone is a choice. Each stone is an intention. Each stone creates ripples that travel farther than you can measure. What ripples do you want to create? What waves do you want to send into the world? The water is waiting, and so is sleep. You do not need to solve life tonight. You only need to rest your nervous system. Let the mind unclench. Let the breath return to its own pace. Let this teaching settle beneath words. Karma is not punishment. It is possibility. It is the freedom to choose moment by moment. And tonight, your choice can be simple. To let the day go. to stop gripping, to let the river flow, to let the lake become still again, to fall asleep naturally with a calm mind and a quieter heart. Consider what kind of waves you want to send across this vast lake of life. The ripples you create today may touch shores you cannot imagine. So choose gently, choose with love, choose with the understanding that every action matters, every thought carries weight, and every moment is another chance to make the world a little softer than it was before. And yet, we hold so tightly, fingers wrapped around moments that were never meant to stay forever, hearts clinging to people who must follow their own paths, minds gripping circumstances that are already shifting. And in all that holding, in all that desperate gripping, we create our own suffering. This is one of Buddhism's clearest insights. We do not suffer only because life contains pain. We suffer because we resist pain. We do not ache only because people leave. We ache because we demand they stay. We do not break only because things change. We break because we insist they remain the same. Attachment is like trying to hold a handful of water. The tighter you squeeze, the faster it escapes, and still, we keep squeezing, confused about why our hands always end up empty. Long ago, the Buddha sat beneath the Bodhi tree and watched his own mind with extraordinary clarity. He saw how suffering is born, not only from outer events, but from the mind's habit of attachment, the mind's need to possess, to control, to make permanent what is naturally impermanent. Think of the last time your heart hurt deeply. Maybe it was the end of a relationship. Maybe it was losing someone you loved. Maybe it was a dream that did not come true. In that moment, what was the deepest pain? Was it only that something beautiful ended, or was it the craving for it to continue forever? There is a difference. Sadness is natural when we lose what is precious, but suffering, that sharp inner refusal, often comes from attachment, from the mind saying, "This cannot be true. This must not be happening. This should not be ending." Attachment can disguise itself as love, but it is love's shadow. Love says, "I want you to be well." Attachment says, "I need you to stay exactly as you are so I can feel safe." Love can hold with open hands. Attachment clenches into a fist. Imagine a mother watching her child grow and leave for college. If she loves without attachment, she feels pride. She feels gratitude. She misses her child, yes, but she celebrates their becoming. If she loves with attachment, she suffers in another way. She tries to pull the child back into the past, back into a role that no longer fits. She is not only missing the child, she's resisting the natural unfolding of life. The same pattern lives in many places. We cling to our homes as if they can never change. We cling to our jobs as if identity depends on a title. We cling to health as if the body will never age. We cling to youth as if time must obey our preferences. But in truth, we are temporary caretakers. Everything we have is on loan, and in time, everything must be returned. There is an old Buddhist story about a master who cherished a clear crystal glass. It was perfectly formed, bright in the light, without a scratch. He used it daily for tea, appreciating its beauty as if it were a small piece of art. One day, a student asked, "Master, are you not afraid this precious glass will break?" The master smiled and said, "I am not afraid, because in my mind, this glass is already broken." The student looked at the glass, confused. "But master, it is perfect. Why do you say it is already broken?" The master held the glass up so the light shone through it. "Everything that exists is temporary," he said. "This glass was made from sand and fire, shaped by human hands. One day it will return to the elements. It might break suddenly. It might wear down slowly. It might break long after I am gone. Since I understand its nature, I do not waste energy fearing what is inevitable. I simply appreciate it fully while it is here. The student felt the meaning settle. So by accepting it will end, you are free to enjoy it. Yes, the master replied. When you accept that things are temporary, you stop taking them for granted. Each moment becomes more precious, not less. This is the paradox of non-attachment. When you stop trying to possess something, you become free to enjoy it. When you loosen your grip, you can finally feel life moving through your hands. Non-attachment does not mean you stop caring. It does not mean you become cold. It means you care with an open hand instead of a closed fist. It means you love so deeply that you can let life move as it needs to move. Consider how relationships change when you love without possessing. Instead of trying to shape your partner into a perfect idea, you begin to see who they are, right now. Instead of fearing that your friends might change, you allow friendship to evolve, to breathe, to grow. Instead of gripping your children with fear, you guide them toward independence with steadiness, and you learn to celebrate their unfolding. This freedom is not only for relationships. It reaches into work, money, plans, and identity. What would change if you pursued your goals wholeheartedly, but held outcomes lightly? If you planted seeds with care, but trusted the garden to grow in its own time? This does not make you passive. In fact, it can make you more effective. When you are not attached to being seen as successful, you can focus on doing what is helpful. When you are not attached to getting credit, you can serve quietly and well. When you are not attached to one exact outcome, you can respond to life with flexibility instead of panic. The practice of letting go begins in small places. Notice when your shoulders tense because someone is not behaving the way you want. Notice when you hold your breath while waiting for news. Notice when you grip your phone, scrolling for reassurance that never truly arrives. These small bodily tensions often mirror mental attachment. So practice releasing gently in tiny moments. When traffic slows, loosen your grip on the schedule and simply be present with the delay. When someone disagrees with you, release the need to be right and listen with curiosity. When plans change, soften the demand that life follow your script and stay open to what may emerge. The teaching of non-attachment is not about loss. It is about abundance. When you stop using all your energy trying to hold on, you have energy to receive what is coming. When you stop grasping, your hands become free. Free to give, free to receive, free to rest. Every tradition points toward this in its own language. Christians say, let go and let God. Taoists speak of Wu Wei, effortless action, moving with the natural current. Indigenous wisdom keeps reminding us that we belong to the land, not the other way around. Different words, same direction. Release the illusion of control, and a quieter freedom appears. Right now, there is something in your life you may be holding too tightly. Maybe it is obvious. A relationship you are trying to force. A job you are afraid to lose. A version of yourself you are desperate to maintain. Maybe it is subtle. An expectation about how this week should unfold. A need for someone to finally understand you. A demand that life must make sense right now, in the way you prefer. What would happen if you loosened your grip just a little? Not giving up, not walking away, just holding with the gentle attention you might give to a butterfly resting on your hand. Present, appreciative, and ready to let it fly when it is ready. This is the art of letting go. Not one dramatic release, but a gradual softening. A daily practice of choosing love over possession, flow over rigidity, trust over control. It is the recognition that everything truly meant for you will find its way, and everything that leaves was never yours to cage. The Master's crystal glass sits on the table, beautiful and temporary. He drinks tea with gratitude, and he does not need to clutch the glass to make the moment precious. And in accepting what breaks, he discovers what does not break. The peace that comes from releasing, the freedom that comes from loosening, the love that multiplies when it is shared without fear. Your hands are already full of what you truly need. You only have to stop gripping long enough to notice. And now, a simple story returns, because it carries the same truth. A farmer's horse ran away, and the neighbors said, "How terrible! What bad luck!" The farmer said, "Maybe." The horse returned, bringing 7 wild horses. The neighbors shouted, "How wonderful! What good fortune!" The farmer said, "Maybe." The farmer's son tried to tame one of the wild horses. He fell and broke his leg. The neighbors sighed, "How awful! What misfortune!" The farmer said, "Maybe." A week later, officials came to draft young men for war. Because his leg was broken, the farmer's son stayed home. The neighbors said, "What a blessing." The farmer said, "Maybe." This story reveals how much energy we spend labeling life. Blessing, curse, fortune, misfortune. But life is larger than our quick judgments. What looks like a disaster today may protect you tomorrow. What looks like a gift may carry its own challenge. Acceptance does not mean you like what happens. It means you stop arguing with what already happened. It means you recognize that resisting reality creates extra suffering. Some of you are fighting something right now. A change you did not choose. A job ending. A relationship shifting. A health concern. A move. Or something inside. Anxiety that will not quiet. Sadness that lingers. Anger that burns and feels justified. You are tired from the fight, but you do not know how to stop fighting. Here is what Buddhism teaches about that fight. Every moment you spend resisting what is already true is a moment stolen from your life. Every ounce of energy spent fighting reality is energy not available for healing or creating something good. Every thought focused on how things should be different is a thought not available to appreciate what is actually here. But acceptance is widely misunderstood. People think it means giving up, becoming passive, resigning yourself to whatever happens. They imagine acceptance as defeat. It is not. True acceptance is active. It is intelligent. It is the difference between swimming against a strong current and learning to move with it. When you fight the current, all your energy goes into not drowning. You exhaust yourself just to stay in place. When you stop fighting, you can actually steer. You can choose direction. You can move. A woman once told me about losing her job after 15 years. At first, she fought it with everything she had. She applied desperately for similar positions, trying to rebuild the old life exactly as it was. She spent nights worrying about money, replaying unfair conversations, searching for ways to undo what had already happened. After months, she realized fighting was not helping, so she tried something different. She accepted that the loss had happened, not because she liked it, but because it was true. And in that acceptance, her energy returned. Instead of grabbing for any job that resembled the old one, she began asking a deeper question. What kind of work would actually fit my life now? What do I want this next chapter to be? She discovered interests she had buried for years. She took a smaller job for a while and used the space to train for something she had always been curious about. 6 months later, she was doing work she loved more than anything she had done in the previous decade. The job loss that felt like an ending became the beginning of her real life. But she could only see it when she stopped fighting what was already true. This is the paradox of acceptance. The moment you stop fighting your circumstances, you become free to change them. When you are no longer wasting energy in resistance, you have power to respond with wisdom instead of panic. The Buddha called this right effort. Not trying harder, not pushing through. Right effort is energy used skillfully, like a swimmer moving with the current instead of against it. Think of a tree in a storm. The rigid tree that refuses to bend may snap. The flexible tree bends and survives. The tree does not stop being a tree when it bends. It reveals strength through adaptation. Acceptance is like that. Not weakness, intelligence. Reality is here, and you meet it. From that truth, you can take wise action. But when you are lost in resistance, the mind is too loud to see clearly. A meditation teacher once asked her students to notice the difference between pain and suffering. Pain is what happens. Suffering is what we add through resistance. If you touch something hot, your hand hurts. That pain is natural and useful. It tells you to move your hand. But if you spend the next hour furious about the burn, replaying it, wishing it did not happen, that is suffering. That is the second layer. Most emotional suffering works this way. Something happens. Instead of feeling the natural response and letting it move through, we argue with it. We replay it. We fantasize about how it should have been. We create a loop. Acceptance breaks the loop. You feel what you feel, but you do not add endless resistance. Emotions become like weather. Sadness comes and goes. Anger rises and falls. Fear appears and dissolves. You do not have to fight the sky. And when you stop fighting emotions, you actually become more sensitive, not less. Sadness can complete itself. Anger can show you where boundaries are needed. Fear can guide you toward what needs attention. The practice begins with small moments. The next time you feel delayed, practice accepting the delay. Notice the tension in the jaw, the tight shoulders, the shallow breath. Then soften. The delay is here. Fighting it in your mind will not erase it, but accepting it can change how it feels. This is how you build strength for larger storms. Now, there is another way Buddhist teaching speaks about difficult times, not as punishments, as teachers. Every scar tells a story of survival. Look at your hands and notice small marks there. Tiny reminders of challenges you faced and continued through. And some scars are not on the skin. They live in memory. The loss that broke you open. The failure that forced a new direction. The betrayal that changed how you trust. The illness that reminded you health is precious. Buddhism does not say these things are good. It says they can become meaningful depending on how you meet them. Before awakening, Siddhartha was a prince sheltered from hardship. When he finally saw sickness, aging, and death, he did not just see suffering. He saw the universal human condition. And he realized avoiding pain was not the path to peace. Transforming the relationship with pain was. This led to one of the deepest truths. Suffering is not the opposite of wisdom. When met with awareness, suffering can become the birthplace of wisdom, but this is not automatic. Pain alone does not make people wise. Pain can also make people bitter, closed, hard. The difference is whether you meet difficulty with resistance or with a watching awareness that stays present and learns. Nature gives a perfect image of this. The butterfly. Inside a cocoon, the caterpillar does not simply grow wings and walk out. It dissolves. Its old form breaks down into something like soup, and within that dissolution, dormant structures awaken. Imaginal cells carry the pattern of wings, antennae, a new body. The butterfly emerges only because the caterpillar form could not remain. Hard seasons in your life can work the same way. They dissolve old identities that no longer fit. They break down beliefs that kept you small. They destroy illusions that were never stable anyway. And in that breaking down, something dormant in you can awaken. Strength, compassion, clarity, patience. A woman once shared her story of surviving cancer. She described the diagnosis as feeling like her world was dissolving. Plans, certainty, the image of the future, all of it changed. She spent months in a dark cocoon of fear, treatment, and deep questioning. But during that dissolution, she discovered things in herself she did not know existed. Courage, presence, gratitude, a tenderness for ordinary life. She said, "I would never choose cancer, but I would not trade the person I became. It broke me open in ways nothing else could. This does not mean every tragedy has a silver lining. Some losses are simply losses. Some pain is simply painful. But even then, consciousness has a remarkable capacity to find meaning, to grow, to stay human." Viktor Frankl wrote about this after surviving concentration camps. He observed that even in terrible conditions, some people kept their humanity. They helped others. They chose dignity. They could not control the outside, but they could choose their response. That choice was a freedom no one could take. Buddhism points to the same thing. Difficulty becomes workable when met with awareness. Instead of only asking, "Why is this happening?" you can also ask, "What is this teaching me? Who am I becoming through this?" Not to erase pain, but to stay open to transformation. If you are in a cocoon season now, if something in you is dissolving and you cannot yet see what is emerging, remember the butterfly. The darkness is not permanent. The breaking down is preparation. Trust the process even when you cannot see where it leads. Now, let us shift into something quieter. Notice the space between this word and the next. In that tiny gap, something simple exists. Awareness, the present moment. Most of us rush past these spaces, but they contain everything we have been searching for. Your mind is a time machine. Even as you listen, a part of your consciousness may be replaying yesterday. Another part may be planning tomorrow. Another fragment may be worrying about something that may never happen. Meanwhile, this moment, the only moment actually here, can slip by unnoticed. Buddhism calls this the monkey mind, restless, jumping, swinging from past regret to future anxiety. And in that swinging, life feels like a blur. Now, gently return to the body. Feel your body touching the surface beneath you. Notice the temperature of the air on your skin. Feel the weight of your hands. Sense the position of your jaw. These sensations have been here the whole time. Your attention was simply elsewhere. Mindfulness is not about stopping thoughts. Thoughts are natural, like clouds moving through the sky. Mindfulness is learning to notice where attention is and gently bringing it back when it wanders. You can begin anywhere. With eating. Most people eat while doing 3 other things: watching, scrolling, planning. Food enters the mouth, but the mind is far away. Try a different way. Before the first bite, pause. Look at the food. Notice color and shape. When you lift the fork, feel its weight. When you chew, taste slowly. Let the body actually receive nourishment. This is not a rule. It is simply presence. And when you eat with awareness, food tastes more vivid. The body signals more clearly. Even an ordinary meal can become a small meditation. Walking is another doorway. Usually walking is transportation. The body moves while the mind runs ahead. But you can walk and be here. Feel your feet touching the ground. Notice the rhythm of steps. Notice the swing of arms. See what you pass without creating stories. Trees, buildings, other people. Just noticing. Walking like this can calm the nervous system. It can make the journey itself feel nourishing. And the most constant doorway is breathing. Breath is always now. You do not need equipment. You do not need perfect posture. You do not have to change the breath. Just notice. Feel air entering. Feel the chest or belly rise. Feel the exhale. Notice the pause. Your mind will wander. That is normal. When you notice it wandered, that noticing is mindfulness. Gently return. Again and again. The returning is the practice. Like guiding a puppy, patient and steady. Each return strengthens your capacity to be present. Over time, this changes the brain, yes. It can reduce reactivity, strengthen emotional regulation, and soften stress responses. But more than that, it changes your relationship with experience. When you are present, even difficult emotions become workable. Instead of drowning in anxiety, you can observe anxiety with compassion. Instead of being controlled by anger, you can notice anger without becoming it. Instead of collapsing into sadness, you can feel sadness and still remain grounded. A woman once described a simple practice that changed her workdays. Before starting any task, she took 3 conscious breaths. That was all. Those 3 breaths became a reset, a return, a way of meeting the next moment with steadiness. This is mindfulness in real life, not escaping life, engaging life more fully, not avoiding challenges, meeting them with awareness. Presence is your natural state. You do not have to create it. You only stop covering it up with constant mental movement. Under the thinking, awareness is here, always. This is why, in Zen Drift Sleep, the invitation is simple. Stop pushing, stop gripping, return to what is already here. The present moment is the only time you can actually live. You cannot change the past. You cannot fully control the future, but you can be here now. And right now, in this moment, you are likely okay. Not perfect, not problem-free, but breathing, alive, supported. Most suffering lives in stories about what was or what might be, not in the simple reality of now. This does not mean you never plan or never learn. It means you use thinking as a tool instead of letting thinking use you. Mindfulness gives you that choice. And tonight, the choice can be simple: to rest, to let the shoulders soften, to let the jaw unclench, to let the breath slow, to let the day float away like a leaf on the river, to sleep, not by force, but by allowing. It creates space between you and your mental activity. It allows you to respond rather than react, and it reveals something quietly freeing. You are not your thoughts. You are the awareness that notices thoughts. This recognition can feel like a door opening in a room you thought was locked, not because your thoughts disappear, but because you stop being trapped inside them. As you continue listening, notice that you are already practicing mindfulness. You are paying attention to something happening right now. Your awareness is present with these sounds, these ideas, this moment. This capacity for presence is not something you have to earn. It is something you already have. The practice is simply remembering it. The quiet power of mindfulness is not that it makes life perfect. It makes life real. It brings you back from the imagined worlds of past and future into the actual world of now. And now is where the beauty, peace, and possibility have been waiting for you all along. Between this word and the next, there is space. In that space, the mind does not have to solve anything. Not tomorrow. Not after you fix everything. Not when circumstances become ideal. Right now, in the simple magic of this moment, your mind can be your prison or your liberation. The same consciousness that creates suffering also contains the power to transform suffering into wisdom. The same awareness that gets caught in stories of victimhood can learn to see those stories as temporary weather passing through a vast sky. This transformation is not fantasy. It is the natural result of seeing how consciousness works. For most of your life, you have probably related to difficult experiences as things that happen to you. Someone hurts your feelings, and you become the wounded one. Life does not go according to plan, and you become the disappointed one. You lose something important, and you become the grieving one. These responses are natural and human. They are not wrong, but they are not the whole truth. Buddhism points to something remarkable. Much of our suffering does not come only from what happens. It comes from the story we add to what happens. It comes from taking a temporary experience and turning it into a permanent identity. It comes from personalizing what is often impersonal. If you cut your finger, the pain is real. The body sends a clear signal. Injury here. Pay attention. The first pain is clean. It is useful. It protects you from further harm. Then the mind often adds layers. I am so clumsy. This always happens to me. Now my whole day is ruined. The first pain is the first arrow. The extra mental suffering is the second arrow. Life brings the first arrow. The real event, the real difficulty, the unavoidable sting. But we often shoot ourselves with the second arrow through resistance, judgment, and the stories we keep repeating. The first arrow hurts. The second arrow creates suffering. Learning to tell the difference is the beginning of freedom. When something difficult happens, you can ask yourself gently, what is the actual experience here? And what am I adding to it? What is the pain? And what is the story about the pain? What is happening now? And what am I imagining might happen because of this? This is not about denying your feelings or pretending everything is fine. It is about seeing clearly. It is about meeting your inner life the way you might meet the weather. Clouds form, clouds dissolve. The sky is not harmed by them. Emotions rise, emotions pass. Awareness remains wide enough to hold them. A man once shared his experience after a painful divorce. At first, he said, I was completely identified with being the rejected husband. Every thought I had, every conversation, every feeling, it all went through that identity. I was drowning in the story. For months he lived inside that narrative. He replayed what happened. He imagined different endings. He fed resentment and self-pity. Then something shifted. He said, I started noticing that I was not only the hurt person, I was also the one who was aware of being hurt. There was a part of me that could observe my pain without being swallowed by it. That observer was not destroyed by what happened. It was present, steady, and compassionate. This is the kind of awakening Buddhism points toward. Not the elimination of difficult experiences, but the recognition that you are larger than any experience. You are not your thoughts about what happened. You are not your emotions about your circumstances. You are the awareness within which thoughts and emotions appear and disappear. When you begin to see this, suffering stops being so personal. Instead of, why is this happening to me? The mind begins to ask, what is this experience teaching me? Instead of, how do I make this pain stop? The heart asks, how do I meet this pain with wisdom? Instead of, what did I do to deserve this? You wonder, what capacity is this difficulty helping me develop? The shift from victim consciousness to student consciousness changes the inner world completely. Buddhist teachers sometimes call this the alchemy of consciousness. Like an alchemist turning ordinary metal into gold, awareness can turn raw experience into wisdom. But this alchemy requires presence. It asks you to turn toward your experience rather than escaping from it. Most of us learn to avoid pain through distraction, through numbing, through denial. We reach for screens when we feel lonely. We bury ourselves in work when we feel anxious. We blame others when we feel hurt. These strategies bring temporary relief, but they also keep the deeper transformation from happening. Healing happens when you meet pain with the same gentle attention you would offer to a frightened child. When you stop running from feelings and begin listening to them. When you remember that even uncomfortable emotions carry information. A woman who struggled with anxiety for years described her breakthrough this way. "I spent decades trying to get rid of anxiety," she said. "I treated it like an enemy. Then I learned to get curious. I began asking, what is this anxiety trying to protect me from? What does it want me to notice?" When she stopped fighting and started listening, the anxiety did not vanish overnight, but it stopped controlling her life. It became a messenger instead of a monster. This is the shift from resistance to acceptance, from being trapped inside emotion to holding emotion with awareness. And the deeper truth is this: consciousness itself is never damaged by what passes through it. Like open space that can hold storms without being torn, awareness remains essentially untouched. The practice is learning to identify with that open awareness rather than with the temporary contents. You are not the anxiety. You are the one who notices anxiety. You are not the sadness. You are the presence that can hold sadness. You are not the anger. You are the awareness that can understand what anger is trying to say. This does not make you numb. It makes you freer. When you are not afraid of emotions, you can feel them more fully. When you are not identified with pain, you can respond to pain more skillfully. When experiences are seen as temporary visitors in the house of awareness, you can meet them with courage and grace. The moment suffering stops being so personal is the moment you begin to remember your true nature, not as a victim of circumstances, but as awareness itself, wide, steady, inherently free, not as someone who needs to be fixed, but as wholeness that has simply been covered by stories. This understanding also changes how you relate to others. When you recognize that awareness is shared, that suffering is universal, compassion becomes natural. Other people's pain matters more because you sense the deeper connection beneath the surface. Right now, as you listen, notice that awareness is already here. You do not have to create it. You do not have to earn it. The consciousness that is aware of thoughts, aware of sensations, aware of emotion, aware of this moment, that awareness is your deepest identity. Everything else is content moving through. The mind can be a prison when it traps you in stories of limitation and separation. But that same mind, understood correctly, becomes the doorway to freedom. Not freedom from life, but freedom to live fully. Not freedom from feeling, but freedom to feel without being overwhelmed. Not freedom from challenge, but freedom to meet challenge as an invitation to grow. This transformation is available right now, not as something you must achieve, but as something you can remember. You are not broken. You are whole. The awareness that can witness suffering is itself free from suffering, and that awareness is who you are. In this recognition, suffering becomes workable. It becomes temporary. It becomes something that can be met with wisdom. This is the liberation the Buddha pointed toward. Not escape from the human experience, but awakening within it. Now let this become quieter, like a lamp dimming into a softer glow. Seeds need darkness to grow. Buried beneath soil, surrounded by what looks like emptiness, they quietly begin transforming. Without the darkness, without the pressure of earth above them, without what looks like an ending, they would never become what they are meant to be. Life follows a similar rhythm. There are seasons that feel like burial, when certainty dissolves, when the old way of being no longer works, when everything familiar shifts. These periods are not necessarily mistakes. They can be incubation. They can be the darkness that prepares the next stage of growth. But many of us resist this cycle with everything we have. We build comfort zones designed to keep life predictable and controlled. We create routines to insulate us from uncertainty. We surround ourselves with familiar people, familiar environments, familiar thoughts. Stability can be helpful, yes, but comfort can also become a cage. Buddhism speaks of beneficial instability, not chaos, but the kind of disruption that forces consciousness to expand beyond what it has been. Like a snake shedding skin, we sometimes must release an old version of ourselves to keep growing. And unlike the snake, we often fight the shedding. Think about the periods when you grew the most. Was it always during ease and comfort? Or was it during difficulty, disruption, and change? For many people, the deepest growth arrived during the hardest years. Not because suffering is desirable, but because disruption creates the conditions for transformation. A woman once described losing her job at 45 after 20 years at the same company. "I was terrified," she said. "My identity was wrapped up in that career. Without it, I did not know who I was." At first, she clung to the familiar. She applied only for similar positions. She tried to rebuild the same life, but the doors did not open. "I fought the change for almost a year," she said. "I was angry and exhausted. Then I realized maybe this disruption was trying to show me something. Maybe my comfort zone had become a cage." In that space of not knowing, she explored interests she had abandoned decades earlier. She took classes, she volunteered, she experimented. Eventually, she started her own business doing work that brought her alive. "I would never have had the courage to leap," she said, "if life had not pushed me out of the nest. The crisis I thought was destroying me was preparing the best chapter of my life." This is what Buddhism means when it speaks of crisis as invitation. Not that hard times are pleasant, but that they often carry wisdom about what needs to change. When familiar supports fall away, we discover inner resources we did not know we had. A breakdown can set up a breakthrough. This is not wishful thinking. It is a pattern found throughout nature. Consider a forest fire. To the casual eye, it looks like destruction. Trees reduced to ash. Years of growth gone in hours. But ecologists know that many forests require periodic fire to stay healthy. Heat cracks open seeds that have been dormant. Ash enriches soil. Old growth clears so sunlight can reach the forest floor. New species take root. What looked like devastation becomes regeneration. Human storms can have a similar pattern. The relationship that ends can open space for deeper self-respect and healthier love. The illness that stops your busy life can teach you what matters. The financial crisis that shakes security can reveal inner wealth. The loss that breaks your heart can open it to greater compassion. But this transformation is not automatic. Fire can regenerate or destroy depending on conditions. Likewise, storms can lead to wisdom or bitterness depending on how they are met. Buddhism offers guidance for meeting these periods skillfully. Recognize that crisis often signals the end of an old way of being. Resist the urge to rebuild the exact past immediately. Use the space to explore what wants to emerge. Trust that something new can grow even if you cannot see it yet. A man once shared his experience of what he called the dark night of being a business owner. After 15 years of building a company, everything began falling apart at once. Employees left. Clients disappeared. Pressure grew. At first, he fought it with frantic energy, working longer hours, taking bigger risks, refusing to admit his old strategies were no longer working. Eventually, he had no choice but to slow down. In that forced stillness, he realized he had been running everything from fear and ego for years. He had lost touch with why he began, to serve something meaningful. The crisis became his teacher. He stopped trying to save the old version. He let it transform. He released what was not aligned. He rebuilt around purpose rather than panic. The company that emerged was smaller but stronger, more authentic, more sustainable. The breakdown cleared away what was not essential. This is one hidden gift of storms. They reveal what is not sustainable. They strip away what is not authentic. They force you to see the difference between what you thought you needed and what you actually need. When you are in the middle of a storm, it can be hard to see any purpose. The wind is too loud. The rain is too blinding. In those moments, the practice is not forced gratitude. The practice is simply this: storms pass. And when the storm passes, something new is possible. Sometimes you see the meaning quickly. Sometimes it takes years. But if you look back at major disruptions in your life, you may notice that each one moved you toward greater authenticity, deeper wisdom, or more honest fulfillment. If something in your life feels out of control right now, remember the seed in darkness, the forest in flame, the butterfly in transformation. This might be an ending that is also a beginning, a breakdown that is preparing a breakthrough. The darkness can be fertile. The unknown can be the doorway. Trust the process. And now, allow this to become softer again. There is an intelligence running through everything. Not the kind that plans and calculates, but a deeper wisdom that shapes the unfolding of life. The same force that tells flowers when to bloom. The same rhythm that guides rivers toward the ocean. The same quiet intelligence that beats your heart without asking permission and heals your body while you sleep. Buddhism calls this Dharma the natural order, the way things are. You have felt it before. Moments when life aligned without effort. The right person appeared at the right time. The door opened when you were ready. What looked like terrible timing became perfect timing in disguise. These were not always coincidences. They were glimpses of the deeper order. Most people live as if separate from this flow, as if life must be forced through willpower and constant effort. We push against closed doors instead of noticing which doors are opening. We demand our timeline instead of listening to life's timing. We exhaust ourselves swimming upstream when the current could carry us exactly where we need to go. But Dharma operates whether we recognize it or not. Like gravity, it shapes reality whether we believe in it or not. The difference is whether we work with it or against it, whether we learn to read its signals or remain blind to them, whether we trust its timing or fight it at every step. Understanding Dharma begins with watching nature. An apple tree does not try to make fruit in winter. It follows a rhythm that matches the seasons. It gives what it can when conditions are right. A river does not struggle to reach the ocean. It follows the path of least resistance, and every drop finds its way. Human beings are part of the same order, but we often forget how to listen. We rely only on planning and analysis. Those are useful, but they are not the whole of knowing. Dharma includes a quieter intelligence. When to act, when to wait, when to speak, when to be silent, when to hold, when to release. This is not passivity. It is skill. Like a sailor reading wind and adjusting sails, you can learn to read the currents of your own life and navigate with wisdom. A gardener understands this naturally. There is a time to plant and a time to harvest, a time to water, and a time to let soil rest. When the gardener forces growth out of season, the result is weak. When the gardener honors timing, the garden thrives. Life has seasons too. Seasons of expansion and seasons of consolidation. Times when everything flows and times when obstacles appear. Times when doors open easily and times when they seem locked. Learning these rhythms can save enormous energy. When you push hard against multiple obstacles and nothing moves, it may not mean you are broken. It may mean the timing is not aligned. When things begin to open effortlessly, when connections appear, when help arrives, when the path clears, it may be the signal that you are moving with the current. A woman once told me she tried to start a business for 3 years. Every step felt like struggle. Funding fell through. Partnerships dissolved. Problems appeared endlessly. I kept pushing because I thought persistence was virtue, she said. But I was exhausted and getting nowhere. Then she made a different choice. She stopped pushing, not because she abandoned her vision, but because she began listening to life's feedback. She said, "I decided to trust that if this was meant to exist, the path would become clearer." Within months, everything shifted. A chance conversation led to funding. A solution appeared through an unexpected connection. What had been blocked suddenly moved. Same idea, same passion, same person, different timing. She said, "I learned Dharma is not only about what you do, it is also about when you do it. And Dharma operates on a scale larger than our impatience. It considers factors you cannot see, connections you are not aware of. Preparations you do not yet know are necessary. Sometimes what looks like a delay is actually protection. The relationship that does not work out clears space for a deeper connection. The job you do not get leads to an opportunity you could not have imagined. The move that gets postponed allows circumstances to align more gently. What feels like life working against you might be life working for you in ways you cannot understand yet. Learning to trust this bigger pattern begins with what Buddhism calls beginner's mind. Meeting each situation with curiosity instead of rigid expectation. Instead of insisting that life obey your timeline, you become interested in discovering life's timeline. Instead of forcing one exact outcome, you remain open to outcomes you have not considered. This does not mean giving up your goals. It means holding your intentions lightly while staying alert to how they want to unfold. Like a jazz musician who knows the melody but stays open to improvisation, you can keep direction without becoming stiff. This practice asks you to notice subtle signals that many people ignore. Notice when your energy feels open and expansive around a decision. Notice when you feel contracted and tight, as if you are forcing something. Observe when opportunities multiply and when obstacles repeat. Pay attention to your sleep, your dreams, your sense of flow. Your body often senses alignment before your mind can explain it. There is also wisdom in recognizing that not all resistance is the same. Some resistance comes from ego. It appears when you step outside your comfort zone or confront an old pattern. That kind of resistance often calls for courage and persistence. Other resistance is different. It feels like pushing upstream against a strong current again and again with no movement. That kind often calls for patience, flexibility, and a change of approach. Learning to tell the difference matters. Buddhist teachers sometimes call this effortless effort. Action that is decisive and relaxed, purposeful and yielding, not a contradiction, but a harmony. True effectiveness comes from aligning personal will with natural law. When you are moving with Dharma, action can feel both important and easy. There is a sense of inevitability, as if what is unfolding could not unfold in any other way. You can cultivate this alignment through simple daily habits. Before big decisions, pause. Do not only think about the options, sense them. Notice what your body says. Which path feels open? Which path feels heavy? Pay attention to small synchronicities that gather around a direction. Trust the wisdom that rises from stillness as much as the analysis that comes from thinking. Sometimes Dharma asks you to act quickly, even when you feel uncertain. Other times Dharma asks you to wait, even when waiting makes you uncomfortable. The deeper intelligence running through life knows when the pieces are truly in place for something to grow. Your job is not to control the timing. Your job is to recognize it and respond. This changes how you relate to uncertainty. Instead of treating the unknown as a threat, you begin to sense it as full of possibility. Instead of needing to see the entire plan, you become willing to move with only enough light to see the next step. This is how natural growth works. One small movement at a time, guided by an intelligence larger than individual understanding. Right now, there is something in your life unfolding according to Dharma's timing, rather than your timing. Maybe it is a creative project that keeps evolving beyond your original plan. Maybe it is a relationship deepening more slowly than you want. Maybe it is a career transition taking longer than expected. Maybe it is healing happening in layers, not all at once. Can you sense the intelligence working beneath the surface? Can you feel how forcing or rushing might disturb something that needs time? Can you trust that the same wisdom that turns seasons and guides rivers also knows how to guide your life? This is Dharma, not fate, not predestination, but the natural order that appears when consciousness and action align with deeper currents. When you learn to read these currents and move with them, life becomes less struggle and more dance. You still participate fully, but from cooperation rather than resistance. The intelligence is always here, moving through everything, shaping what wants to emerge. Your invitation is to notice it, trust it, and allow it to guide you home. There is an old parable. A king wanted to cover his entire kingdom in leather, so his people would never have to walk on rough ground. He summoned advisors and commanded them to begin this massive undertaking. It would take enormous effort, vast cost, endless labor. Then one wise advisor approached the king and said gently, "Your Majesty, instead of covering the entire kingdom, why not simply cover your feet?" And so shoes were born. This simple story reveals something about the human condition. We spend tremendous energy trying to make the world perfectly comfortable, instead of learning how to move through it skillfully. We try to control circumstances beyond our influence while ignoring the one place where real control is possible, our response. The illusion of control is one of the mind's most exhausting tricks. It promises that if you plan enough, work hard enough, worry enough, you can guarantee outcomes. It whispers that safety comes from managing every variable, predicting every possibility, preparing for every future. But that promise can never be fulfilled, and the attempt keeps the nervous system tense, always scanning, always bracing. Buddhism teaches that the urge to control grows from misunderstanding reality. We imagine ourselves as separate beings in a hostile universe that must be conquered. But we are part of an interconnected web, where everything influences everything else in ways too complex to fully manage. Still, we persist. We try to control our children's choices to protect them. We try to manage a partner's behavior to feel secure. We work frantically to control markets, weather, opinions, aging. We live in vigilance, solving problems before they exist. And the irony is that this hypervigilance often creates the problems we fear. When you try to control a conversation, people grow defensive. When you try to force a relationship outcome, pressure builds and connection weakens. When you grip a plan too tightly, you miss the opportunities that require flexibility. A woman once laughed as she described her old habits. "I had backup plans for my backup plans," she said. "I would lie awake, running through scenarios, preparing for futures that never came. I thought I was being responsible. I was actually torturing myself." Her turning point came during a family crisis. where no plan mattered. Her father had a stroke. All her preparations became irrelevant. The only thing that mattered was showing up with presence and love. She realized she had been so busy trying to control the future that she was missing the present. This is the paradox of surrendering control. When you stop trying to manage every outcome, you become more capable of responding to what actually happens. When you release your grip on how things should unfold, you begin to see what is unfolding. When you stop steering imaginary storms, you gain energy to meet real life with clarity. Nature offers a teacher for this, the river. Water does not fight its environment. It works with what it meets. When it reaches a boulder, it does not waste energy trying to move the rock. It flows around, it flows over, it flows under. And over time, through persistent gentleness, it shapes the landscape. Not through violence, through steady movement. This is effortless power, influence without force, progress without strain. You can move through your own life in the same way. When you meet obstacles, you can pause before you rush to remove them. You can ask what they might be showing you. When doors stay locked, you can look for other openings. When you feel yourself forcing, you can ask if life is asking for a different route. This does not mean passivity. Rivers are powerful. They carve canyons. They reshape mountains. But they do it by moving with reality, not by arguing with it. The practice begins by learning the difference between what you can influence and what you cannot. You can influence your actions, your choices, your effort, your attitude, your attention. You cannot control other people's reactions, economic conditions, weather, time, the countless variables that shape life. Wisdom is putting energy where it makes a difference. When you notice yourself trying to control what cannot be controlled, pause and ask, what would happen if I stopped trying to steer the ocean? What if you learn to read the current instead? What if the thing you are resisting contains guidance? A businessman once described learning this during an economic downturn. I spent months trying to force my old business model to work in a world that had changed, he said. I was paddling upstream against a flood. I worked harder than ever and moved backward. The shift happened when he stopped fighting the reality and began learning from it. The market was showing him that his old approach was outdated. Instead of resurrecting what was dying, he explored what wanted to be born. Within 2 years, he built something more sustainable than what he lost. This is the gift hidden in uncertainty. It forces you to develop skills you did not know you had. When you cannot control outcomes, you learn to trust your ability to handle what comes. When supports fall away, inner resources appear. When plans collapse, improvisation becomes strength. Buddhist practice offers tools for this. Meditation helps you observe thoughts without being pushed by them. Mindfulness helps you notice when you are gripping expectations. These practices build equanimity, the ability to remain steady while life shifts. But perhaps the deepest practice is remembering you are not separate from the flow you are trying to control. The same intelligence that beats your heart and heals your body is moving through life. This recognition softens the belief that you must control everything to be safe. Safety does not come from managing the outer world. Safety comes from trusting your capacity to respond wisely. Peace does not come from a perfect plan. Peace comes from knowing you can meet whatever arises. The king learned to wear shoes rather than cover the kingdom in leather. You can make the same discovery. There is something in your life you are trying to control that might be asking for adaptation instead. Some outcome you are gripping so tightly that you cannot see what is trying to emerge. What would happen if you loosened that grip just a little? What would happen if you stopped steering the ocean and started learning to sail? What if you trusted that the same force that moves rivers and grows forests also knows how to move your life toward its highest expression. The illusion of control begins dissolving when you see you are never separate from what you tried to control. You are part of the current, part of the flow, part of the intelligence. And when you stop fighting that truth, life becomes easier, not because nothing is hard, but because you are no longer at war with reality. Now, let us go deeper. The stranger who smiled at you this morning may have changed your day in ways you cannot measure. That single smile softened your guard. It reminded you that kindness still exists, but the ripples did not stop there. The warmth you felt made you more patient with someone else. That person went home in a better mood. They were gentler with their family. Their children slept more peacefully. One small moment became a wave of well-being across a web of connection. This is a truth Buddhism has pointed to for more than 2,000 years. Nothing exists in isolation. Every thought you think, every word you speak, every action you take sends ripples through an interconnected network of life. We are not separate individuals moving alone through an indifferent world. We are threads in the same tapestry. The Buddha taught dependent origination, the understanding that everything arises in relationship to everything else. Your breath depends on plants. Your food depends on soil, rain, and countless hands. Your thoughts depend on language learned from others and experiences shaped by community. Even your sense of self exists only in relationship to what you call not self. And this interconnection is not only physical. The inner state you carry influences others. You have felt this. You meet someone deeply peaceful, and without them saying anything, your own nervous system begins to settle. You breathe deeper. You think more clearly. Their inner steadiness touches you. And the reverse is also true. When you are anxious, people around you feel the tension. When you are angry, the atmosphere tightens. This is not to shame you for being human. It is to show you how much influence you carry. A mother once described how her own healing changed her whole family. "I thought I was only working on myself," she said. "But as I became more peaceful, everything shifted. My husband stopped walking on eggshells. My children became more open. The house felt lighter. She did not try to change anyone. Her inner change created space for others to change." This is the meaning of interconnection. Your peace contributes to peace in the world. Your healing becomes a kind of healing for everyone you touch. Your effort to grow is not selfish. It is one of the most generous gifts you can offer. Scientists sometimes describe a similar pattern with the butterfly effect. Small changes in one part of a system can create large effects elsewhere. But consciousness is even more subtle than weather. When you forgive someone, you do not only free yourself, you strengthen the field of forgiveness. When you choose love over fear, you strengthen the pattern of love. When you find calm in chaos, you offer the possibility of calm to others. This understanding changes spiritual practice. You are not working on yourself in isolation. Every meditation, every moment of mindfulness, every act of kindness adds to a wider field. It does not have to be dramatic. A calm voice in a tense room, a patient breath in traffic, a gentle answer instead of a sharp one. These are ripples. A meditation teacher once said, "I used to think sitting quietly was selfish. Then I saw how people responded differently as my practice deepened. Conflicts softened. Conversations improved. Strangers felt safer. I realized inner peace is service." Interconnection also means you are constantly receiving support from others. Every person who chooses compassion makes it easier for you to choose it. Every being who heals makes healing more possible. Every act of kindness strengthens the web you live inside. Many cultures have held this truth for centuries. Ubuntu says, "I am because we are." Some traditions speak of caring for the next 7 generations. Buddhist prayers often include the wish for the welfare of all beings. These are not just ideals. They reflect a simple reality. Individual and collective well-being are inseparable. This invites you to live with more intention. When you are stuck in traffic, you can add to frustration, or you can be one calm point. When someone is rude, you can continue the chain, or you can end it. This does not mean letting people treat you badly. It means not letting negativity control your heart. Healthy boundaries matter. But even with boundaries, you can choose the quality of your inner state. And your inner state is never only personal. It shapes the world around you. Some people hear this and feel pressure. If everything I do affects everyone, how can I relax? But interconnection is not a burden. It is support. You do not carry the world alone because you are not separate from it. The love you give returns, often from unexpected directions. The peace you cultivate multiplies through connections you cannot see. As you listen tonight, you are part of this web. Your attention joins the attention of others seeking calm. Your desire to grow strengthens a collective direction toward wisdom. You are not alone in this. We are threads in the same tapestry. When one thread becomes stronger, the whole fabric is strengthened. Now, another layer. A woman once said, "I changed nothing about my life except my heart. Same job, same apartment, same routine, same people." But something shifted inside, and within months, my outer world changed in ways I could not explain. Her difficult boss became more supportive. Opportunities appeared. Relationships softened. She kept saying, "I did not change anything." But everything changed. She discovered a teaching Buddhism returns to again and again. The outer world is more responsive to consciousness than most people realize. Not because life is a magical wish machine, but because perception shapes experience, and experience shapes behavior, and behavior changes outcomes. Most of us believe the opposite. We think we must change circumstances in order to feel different. Once I get the right job, then I will be calm. Once I have enough money, then I will rest. Once the relationship is perfect, then I will feel safe. Buddhism turns it around. When you cultivate peace within, you begin to create the conditions that support peace, not through force, through alignment. Perception is powerful. When you see the world through fear, you notice threats everywhere, and you move defensively. When you see the world through gratitude, you notice abundance, and you move differently. When you see the world through suspicion, you invite conflict. When you see the world through goodwill, you invite cooperation. The mind is the forerunner of experience. Before anything becomes action, it begins as a thought, a belief, a lens. Change the lens, and the world you live in changes too. A man once shared how he transformed a hostile workplace. "I was convinced my colleagues were sabotaging me," he said. "I went in defensive every day, watching for betrayal, and I found proof everywhere." Then he experimented. He decided to assume good intent, even when communication was poor. He stopped searching for sabotage and started searching for support. He approached people with curiosity instead of suspicion. "Nothing changed except my lens," he said. But within weeks, everything changed. The same people became more cooperative. Projects began moving. Conversations softened. This is the mirror principle. Reality reflects the energy you bring, not the image you perform, the inner state you actually carry. If you act confident but feel fearful inside, fear leaks into everything. If you smile but hold resentment inside, resentment shapes your tone. If you embody calm, people feel it. The mirror does not judge. It simply reflects. If you do not like what you see, you do not fight the mirror. You change what you bring to it. A teacher discovered this when she stopped trying to control her students and started embodying the calm attention she wanted in the room. I was always battling disruption, she said. The classroom felt like war. Then I realized my own inner agitation was feeding the chaos. She began starting her mornings with stillness. She came to school centered. She stopped bracing for trouble and held an intention for connection and learning. The same children who had been restless became more engaged. The change was not magic. It was nervous systems responding to nervous systems. This understanding changes the question. Instead of only asking, "How do I change this situation?" you begin asking, "How do I change my relationship to this situation?" Instead of obsessing over what is wrong outside, you explore what wants to heal inside. This is not blame, it is responsibility. And responsibility is power. A woman who struggled with loneliness discovered this by accident. I stopped waiting for people to invite me, she said. I started inviting others. Not because I was confident, but because I wanted connection. As she created connection, something changed inside her. She stopped needing it so desperately. She became the kind of person who could offer warmth. And then connection began flowing back to her naturally. People reached out. Friendships deepened. She said, "Once I stopped clinging, it arrived." This principle reaches everywhere. If you want more love, practice being more loving. If you want more peace, practice being more peaceful. If you want more trust, practice being trustworthy. If you want more abundance, practice generosity and gratitude. The outer world responds to what you embody. Not perfectly, not instantly, but steadily, like water shaping stone. And it requires honesty. You cannot fake inner change. The mirror reflects what is true inside. So the practice is simple, but not always easy. When something outside feels difficult, you ask, what inside me is reacting? What old belief is shaping this? What quality do I need to develop here? Sometimes external action is needed, yes. But even then, the consciousness you bring determines whether action is wise or reactive. Love creates lasting change. Fear creates more fear. So tonight, as this Zen Drift Sleep story continues, let your mind soften. You do not have to control the entire kingdom. You only have to cover your own feet. You do not have to steer the ocean. You only have to learn how to sail. And as you breathe now, notice that the breath is already carrying you. The body is already healing. The mind can already quiet. The next step is simply allowing. The same miracle is available to you, not through forcing or manipulating the outside world, but through the gentle, persistent transformation of your inner landscape. When you change your heart, the way you see and move through life changes, and life begins to respond to that change. Your outer world starts to reflect the beauty you cultivate within. The miracle is not that change is possible. The miracle is that it becomes natural once you align with what is true in you. Many people in your life arrived through a kind of quiet magnetism, not in a rigid, predetermined way, and not as a punishment or reward, but through the way consciousness draws together experiences that can deepen understanding. The people who love you, the people who challenge you, the people who pass through briefly, and the ones who stay for decades. Each connection can serve a purpose in the unfolding story of who you are becoming. Buddhism sometimes speaks of karmic affinity, a resonance that brings certain people together, creating opportunities for mutual learning, mutual healing, and sometimes mutual letting go. This does not mean everything is fated. It does not mean harmful relationships should be tolerated. It simply means consciousness has an intelligence that can bring together experiences capable of catalyzing growth, even when that growth arrives through difficulty. Think about the most significant relationships in your life. The person who believed in you when you could not believe in yourself. The friend who showed up during your darkest hour. The mentor who saw potential you did not yet see. The partner who stayed through your most unlovable phases. These encounters rarely feel random when you look back. They often arrive with a strange precision, offering exactly what was needed for your next step. But relationships serve different purposes, and understanding that can transform how you experience both connection and separation. Some people come into your life for a season. They bring a specific gift, a specific lesson, a specific kind of support. Then the connection naturally changes, or ends, or drifts. Others stay for many years. They grow beside you. They change beside you. Their story becomes woven into yours. Some appear briefly, but leave a lasting impact, like one sentence that changes a life. Each duration can be perfect for what it was meant to give. A woman once described her realization about this after a close friendship ended unexpectedly. "I was devastated," she said. "She stopped calling. She stopped including me. I kept trying to figure out what I did wrong and how I could fix it." Then she began reflecting on what that friendship had given her during the time they were close. She realized her friend had arrived at a moment when she desperately needed encouragement for her creativity. For 3 years, that friend was her biggest supporter, the one who insisted her art mattered, the one who helped her take herself seriously. By the time the friendship faded, she said, "I no longer needed external validation. I had internalized the belief in myself that she helped me develop." The friendship had completed its work. Instead of mourning only the ending, she began to feel gratitude for what it had built in her. This perspective changes the way you experience the natural ebb and flow of relationships. Instead of clinging to connections that want to evolve, you can appreciate what each person brought to your journey. And when a chapter ends, you can trust that space opens for new connections that serve the next part of your growth. But the most challenging part of this teaching involves the people who have caused pain. This requires careful understanding. It does not mean abuse is acceptable. It does not mean victims are responsible for what was done to them. It does not mean you should stay in dangerous situations. What it means is something quieter. Consciousness has the ability to extract wisdom from painful experiences when those experiences are met with awareness, support, and healing. Even harm, when properly addressed, can become the ground from which strength and discernment grow. This is delicate, and timing matters. Sometimes the first step is not meaning. The first step is safety. Sometimes the first step is not spiritual framing. The first step is getting help, getting distance, setting boundaries, healing the nervous system. And then, later with care, you may begin to see what you learned. A man shared his journey of healing from a childhood with an alcoholic father. "For years," he said, "I was consumed with anger. The idea that he was my teacher sounded like spiritual bypassing. It felt insulting. But through therapy and Buddhist practice, he began to see his experience in another light. He realized that growing up in that environment made him extremely sensitive to other people's emotions. He could read a room instantly. He could sense fear, shame, and hidden sadness. What had been hypervigilance in childhood became empathy in adulthood. He became a counselor, helping others navigate family addiction. This does not make what happened okay, he said. I still had to heal. But recognizing how it shaped my capacity for compassion helped me transform pain into purpose. Sometimes the teaching is not about becoming more gentle. Sometimes it is about becoming more clear. The person who breaks promises teaches you the importance of reliability. The one who violates boundaries teaches you why boundaries matter. The relationship that drains you helps you recognize what nourishment actually feels like. Buddhism also speaks of spiritual friends. the rare relationships that support mutual awakening. These are the people who see your potential and call you toward it without shame, who tell you difficult truths with kindness, who celebrate your victories without jealousy, who sit with your struggles without trying to control you. These relationships are precious. When you find them, treasure them. And when you become this kind of friend to others, you offer one of the greatest gifts a person can receive. There is also wisdom in observing your patterns across relationships. Do you often attract people who need rescuing? Do you give more than you receive? Do you abandon yourself to keep others comfortable? Do you struggle with intimacy when things get too close? Patterns like these are not verdicts against you. They are signals. They point toward places within you that want healing and integration. A woman noticed she repeatedly found herself in friendships with people in crisis. I was always the helper, she said. People called me when everything fell apart. I felt useful, but I was exhausted, and my own needs were never addressed. Through reflection, she realized this pattern came from childhood, where her value depended on being helpful to a struggling parent. Once she saw it, she could choose differently. She began creating friendships where support flowed both directions. Gratitude for encounters does not mean pretending harmful relationships were wonderful. It means recognizing that every connection, pleasant or painful, shaped your understanding of yourself and others. The one who betrayed you taught discernment. The one who loved you showed what is possible. The friend who grew in a different direction reminded you that change is natural. Right now, consider the people currently in your life. What might each relationship be teaching? The colleague who irritates you might be reflecting something about patience or boundaries. The family member who triggers you might be showing you an old wound that still needs attention. The person who inspires you might be modeling qualities you are ready to develop. Buddhism reminds us that we are walking each other home. Every interaction can become an opportunity for awakening if you meet it with attention. Some people stay in your story for entire chapters. Others arrive for a single sentence that changes everything. Some bring comfort. Some bring challenge. Some are allies who hold you up. Some are antagonists who force growth. All of this belongs to the fullness of a human life. And the greatest gift you can offer anyone is your own awakening. When you heal your wounds, you stop passing wounds forward. When you find peace inside, you become a source of calm for those around you. When you learn to love yourself, you can love others with fewer demands. You can honor people's presence, receive their gifts, learn from their lessons, and release them with gratitude when their chapter ends. Because the story continues. New characters arrive when they are needed. Now consider something else. Do you keep attracting the same kind of situation again and again, only with different faces? The same relationship drama in new disguises? The same financial pressure appearing in different forms? The same conflict repeating in new workplaces? The same family pattern echoing across generations? If you are honest, you can usually see patterns, cycles that circle back like a song replaying, until you finally learn the words. Buddhism teaches that life is a patient teacher. It does not abandon the lesson because you missed it the first time, or the 10th, or the 50th. It keeps presenting the same teaching in slightly different forms, until you develop the awareness and skill to respond differently. This is not punishment. It is training. It is how consciousness learns. A child writes the same letter over and over until the hand remembers. Life does something similar. It gives repeated opportunities to practice new ways of being until they become natural. Patterns repeat because unresolved tendencies in consciousness keep creating similar experiences. If you respond to conflict with defensiveness, you will meet conflict again and again until you learn a different response. if you sacrifice your needs to avoid disappointing people, you will keep finding relationships that take more than they give until you build boundaries. A woman described her pattern of choosing emotionally unavailable partners. For 15 years, she said, I fell for men who seemed perfect at first, but could not commit to real intimacy. I blamed them. I thought I had bad luck in love. Eventually, I had to face the truth. I was the common denominator. Through therapy and deep reflection, she saw that genuine intimacy terrified her. She grew up with love that could be withdrawn. Emotionally distant partners felt familiar, even as they left her lonely. I was recreating my childhood, she realized, hoping it would end differently. The pattern shifted only when she addressed the root. She worked on her own capacity for closeness. She learned to recognize availability, not just charm. Slowly, her choices changed. Her relationships changed. A man noticed he kept leaving jobs after about 2 years, always feeling overlooked. I told myself I had terrible bosses, he said, but when it happened at the 4th company, I had to look inward. He observed his own behavior and realized he often took on extra work without communicating his contributions clearly. He assumed effort would be noticed automatically. When it was not, he grew resentful and withdrew, which made him less visible. I was creating what I complained about, he said. Breaking the pattern required learning new skills, advocating for himself, communicating needs, asking directly rather than hoping others would read his mind. Sometimes patterns repeat because we are unconsciously trying to heal an old wound through a new situation. We recreate the past, hoping it will end differently this time, but without awareness, we often reproduce the same pain. Buddhism suggests a different kind of healing, not recreating the past, developing new capacities in the present. Instead of trying to get the love you did not receive from romantic partners, you learn to give that love to yourself. Instead of seeking validation from authority figures, you build confidence that does not depend on approval. The moment of graduation comes when an old trigger appears and you choose differently. You breathe instead of reacting. You set a boundary instead of people-pleasing. You speak truth instead of swallowing it. You choose self-compassion instead of self-attack. These moments may look small, but they are enormous in the inner world. The pattern stops when the lesson is learned, not only understood, but embodied. This does not mean life becomes easy. It means life becomes workable. The challenges evolve. The lessons become more subtle. You may move from basic self-worth into deeper compassion, from boundaries into wisdom about when to soften and when to stand firm. Sometimes people resist this teaching because it sounds like blame. This is not blame. External circumstances matter. Other people's choices matter. Harm is real. But focusing on what you can influence, your responses, your awareness, your inner development, is more empowering than staying trapped in helplessness. Right now, notice if there is a pattern in your life. What keeps repeating? What might it be teaching you? What capacity do you need to develop to respond differently? What would change if you saw this pattern as a patient teacher rather than a curse? The repetition is not evidence of failure. It is evidence that life has not given up on your growth. And when the lesson is learned, relief arrives. Not because life becomes perfect, but because you now have the tools to meet life with wisdom. And then a deeper question rises. Purpose. Some people spend years searching for purpose, as if it were a hidden object they must find and then carry. But purpose is often more intimate than that. It is woven into your daily life waiting to be recognized. Purpose is not always one grand mission. It is often a direction, a way of being, a way of using your gifts in service of what matters. Purpose reveals itself through what draws you, what breaks your heart, what makes you feel most alive. It lives at the intersection of your natural gifts and the world's needs. It grows when you stop trying to be who you think you should be and start expressing who you actually are. A man spent years searching for his purpose in books and workshops. "I thought it would come as a dramatic revelation," he said. "The more I searched, the more confused I became." Then he volunteered at a food bank because a friend asked. Something about organizing the donations felt natural. He saw ways to improve the system. He cared deeply about dignity for the people they served. "I was not searching anymore," he said. "I was living it." Within 2 years, he left corporate life for non-profit work. Purpose arrived not as lightning, but as a steady pull. A teacher discovered purpose in the margins of education. "I loved teaching," she said, "but I kept noticing children struggling, not because they lacked intelligence, but because they learned differently. I began staying after school, creating new approaches. It grew into a program that changed the whole district. I never set out to be an advocate," she said, "but my heart kept breaking for those children. That heartbreak became my compass. Purpose often grows from what troubles you most, from the suffering you cannot ignore, from the gap you keep noticing, from the part of you that wants to make things more humane. And purpose does not require status. It can be expressed in small places. How you raise your children, how you treat the cashier, how you listen to a friend in crisis. A janitor at a hospital said, "I clean floors, but my real job is creating an environment where healing can happen. I notice worried families. I offer directions. I offer a kind word." Purpose is not about being seen. It is about bringing your whole self to what you do. What makes you come alive? This question cuts through noise and expectation. Maybe it is creating beauty. Maybe it is solving problems. Maybe it is nurturing growth in people or communities. Maybe it is building something that serves others. The feeling of coming alive is your consciousness recognizing its natural expression. It may require courage. It may require change, but it has a quality of truth you cannot fake. And tonight, in this long Zen sleep story, you do not need to solve your purpose. You only need to rest. Because when the body rests and the mind softens, clarity tends to rise more easily. Not by force, by allowance. So let these ideas settle. Let them sink beneath thought like stones settling at the bottom of a lake. Let your breath continue, steady and quiet. Let your nervous system know it is safe to release the day. You do not need to carry every question into the night. Sleep will do its own work. And the deeper intelligence you are learning to trust will still be there in the morning. A woman once realized her purpose was helping people die with dignity. It happened after she cared for her grandmother during her final months. "I discovered I had a natural ability to be present with people in their most vulnerable moments," she said. "I could sit with grief and fear without trying to fix anything." She became a hospice counselor and found deep fulfillment in work many people would find too heavy. "Death work is not morbid," she explained. "It is life work. Helping someone face mortality with grace helps them live more fully. I come alive in those moments of truth and tenderness. Your purpose may not look dramatic to other people. It might be expressed through raising children with consciousness and patience. It might be keeping family traditions alive. It might be creating beautiful, calming spaces. It might be quietly being the steady person in chaotic environments. It might be learning and growing rather than producing and achieving. It might be healing generational patterns, so the ones who come after you do not have to carry what you carried. It might be developing qualities that serve your community in subtle but essential ways. The key is remembering this. Your existence matters inherently, not only for what you accomplish. Your consciousness contributes to the collective awakening of humanity simply by being here and by growing. Your movement toward greater awareness, compassion, and authenticity sends ripples outward, touching lives in ways you will never fully see. You did not arrive here by accident. Your particular combination of gifts, challenges, and circumstances creates experiences that could not happen in quite the same way through anyone else. Your unique thread in the tapestry of existence matters. Your purpose is not something you must hunt down like a hidden object. It is something you remember, something you express, something you trust. Right now, in this moment, you can begin living your purpose more fully, not by changing everything overnight, but by bringing more consciousness to what you are already doing, by paying attention to what calls to you, by noticing what makes you feel most alive, by trusting that consciousness knows what it is doing, even when your mind does not. Your life is not a mistake. Your challenges are not punishments. Your gifts are not accidents. You are here with meaning. And the real question is not whether you have a purpose. The question is whether you are ready to live it. Sometimes life has to shatter to show you what is unbreakable. The job that defined your identity can vanish. A relationship you built your world around can crumble. Health you took for granted can change. Beliefs that once gave your days meaning can suddenly feel hollow. In those moments of dissolution, when everything familiar falls away, something strange can appear beneath the wreckage. Mystics have called this the dark night of the spirit, not as a punishment, not as evidence you failed, but as consciousness preparing for a fundamental shift in how you understand yourself and reality. When the structures you built an identity around become too small for who you are becoming, they often fall away. Not to ruin you, to make space, to let something more authentic emerge. But we need to say one important thing clearly. If you are experiencing thoughts of self-harm, severe depression, or feeling disconnected from reality, that is not something to spiritualize. It is a signal to seek professional support immediately. True awakening strengthens your connection to life. It does not increase your desire to escape it. Support matters. Therapy matters. Medical care matters. If you are in genuine crisis, reach out to a trusted person and a qualified professional. This teaching is meant to complement care, not replace it. And with that said, there are periods in life when everything does seem to unravel at once. These periods often contain seeds of transformation. Buddhism recognizes that consciousness can outgrow its current container and needs to reorganize at a more inclusive level, like a snake shedding skin, like a butterfly dissolving inside a cocoon. From the outside, it looks like destruction, but inside, something is reorganizing. A woman described her experience of what she called her great falling apart in her early 40s. Everything I worked for was disappearing, she said. My marriage ended. My career stalled. My parents were aging and needed care. I felt like I was free falling with no parachute. For months she struggled with anxiety and depression. She sought therapy. She leaned on friends. She tried to keep going one day at a time. But somewhere in the darkness, she noticed something. All the roles she had been playing were falling away. The perfect wife, the successful professional, the always strong daughter, and yet she was still here. Underneath the identities, something remained, something that could not be destroyed by circumstances. That recognition became the beginning of rebuilding. I had to lose everything I thought I was, she said, to discover who I actually am. The breakdown became a breakthrough, but only after she stopped fighting it and started learning from it. This is the paradox of spiritual crisis. It can require losing an old self to find a truer self. The identities, beliefs, and structures that once provided security become too small. Like a hermit crab outgrowing its shell, you have to step into a vulnerable in-between space before you can find a larger home. Ancient myths understood this. The phoenix does not slowly improve. It burns completely. It becomes ash. And only then does it rise renewed. The fire is not optional. It is part of the regeneration. Human transformation can feel like that. Old patterns burn away. Old identities collapse. Old illusions dissolve. But human transformation is healthiest when it happens with support. Isolation is not always wisdom. Breaking open does not mean breaking alone. It can mean letting trusted people witness your process, receiving guidance from those who have walked similar terrain, remembering that seeking help is strength. A man shared his experience of a midlife spiritual crisis that first looked like depression. "I lost interest in everything that used to motivate me," he said. "Work felt meaningless. Social activities felt empty. Even hobbies could not hold my attention." He sought therapy. He explored whether medication might help. He did not try to brave it alone. And he also began studying contemplative traditions. "I discovered that what I was experiencing had been described for thousands of years," he said. "The dissolving of attachments, the questioning of assumptions, the sense that nothing solid remained to hold." Understanding it did not make it easy, but it helped him trust the process instead of only fearing it. Over 18 months, with therapeutic support and spiritual practice, he emerged with a different relationship to meaning and purpose. "I stopped trying to extract significance from achievements," he said. "I started finding meaning in presence. The heaviness lifted, and I discovered a peace that does not depend on life going smoothly." This breaking open makes space. When familiar structures collapse, there is disorientation at first, but in the space, new qualities can grow. Compassion, wisdom, a quiet joy, a steadiness that does not depend on everything being perfect. The key is learning to distinguish between necessary dissolution and unnecessary suffering. Some pain is part of growth, like muscles strengthening or a heart expanding. Other pain is created by resistance, by fighting a change that is already happening. Spiritual crisis often contains both. Wisdom is knowing when to surrender and when to seek support. Buddhism teaches that attachment to fixed identities causes suffering, because consciousness is naturally fluid. When you cling too tightly to being the successful one, the helper, the strong one, you narrow your ability to respond to life. Crisis forces a release of these limited self-concepts. It creates space for a more flexible, more inclusive identity. This does not mean all crisis leads to awakening. Some experiences are genuinely traumatic, and it would be cruel to suggest they are automatically meaningful. But for those who find themselves in deep questioning and dissolution, recognizing the potential transformative nature of such periods can offer direction. The process is rarely linear. Some days you feel progress. Some days you feel like you are drowning. There are moments of insight followed by confusion. The old self does not die gracefully. The new self does not arrive fully formed. Patience matters. Self-compassion matters. If you are in a season where everything feels uncertain, remember this. Dissolution often precedes creation. The caterpillar does not know it will become a butterfly. It only knows its old way of being is no longer sustainable. Trust that consciousness knows what it is doing, even when the mind cannot make sense of it. And also remember that support is not weakness. Therapists, trusted friends, spiritual directors, support groups, these can be essential during transformation. The hermit path is not the only path. and isolation can sometimes deepen crisis rather than resolve it. What feels like an ending may be the beginning you are unconsciously preparing for. What seems like failure may be liberation from success that was never truly yours. What appears to be falling apart may be falling together in a new pattern you could not have planned. This breaking open is making space for something more authentic, more compassionate, more aligned with the truth that lives at your center. The phoenix rises not because the fire was pleasant, but because the fire was necessary for transformation. And you too carry everything you need to rise. Now, what if you stopped fighting and started dancing? What if, instead of bracing against life's rhythm, you learn to move with it? What if the very thing you are resisting is trying to become your partner in a more beautiful way of living? This shift from resistance to flow is supported by two practices. Buddhism returns to again and again: gratitude and surrender. Not the shallow kind that pretends everything is fine. The deeper kind that recognizes what is real. Gratitude is not forcing positivity. It is training awareness to notice what is present alongside difficulty. When you are going through hard times, gratitude does not mean you are thankful for pain. It can mean you are thankful for the friend who shows up, for the strength you are discovering, for the simple fact that you are still breathing and capable of growth. A woman going through a messy divorce described how gratitude practice saved her sanity. "I was consumed with anger and hurt," she said. "My therapist suggested I write down 3 things I was grateful for each day. I thought it was ridiculous, but she tried. The first week, her list was basic. I have coffee. My dog still loves me. I made it through today." Slowly, she began noticing more. A lawyer who was competent and kind. A friend who listened without judgment. A moment of sunlight. A small laugh. The practice did not erase the pain, but it kept the pain from consuming her whole mind. This is gratitude as a quiet technology. A way of training the brain to notice support alongside struggle. Beauty alongside difficulty, life alongside loss, and gratitude becomes even more powerful when paired with surrender. Surrender is not defeat. It is not passivity. It is not giving up hope. Surrender is the wisdom of releasing how you think things must be so you can work with how things actually are. A farmer whose crops were destroyed by an unexpected flood could spend months raging at the weather. Or he could accept what already happened and focus energy on what is still possible. He could learn about soil, about insurance, about different crops. He could rebuild. "I could not control the flood," he might say, "but I could control how I responded to it." That is surrender as strength. It takes courage to stop arguing with reality. It takes wisdom to stop wasting energy on what cannot be changed, and to place energy where it matters. Buddhism teaches that reality has rhythm. Like music, there are pauses, there are crescendos, there are transitions. When you try to force a different tempo, you create discord. When you sense the underlying beat and move with it, the whole life becomes easier. Sometimes life asks you to speed up, sometimes to slow down, sometimes to rest completely. Wisdom is sensing what rhythm is needed and responding. A musician described learning this through performance. "Early in my career, I tried to control every detail," she said. "If something went wrong, I got tense and the whole performance suffered." Over time, she learned to treat unexpected moments as openings for improvisation, not disasters. She learned to stay in the music. This is how surrender becomes dance. Traffic becomes a place to breathe instead of a battlefield. Plans changing become a place to adapt instead of panic. People not behaving as you expect becomes a place to practice patience and boundaries. The practice begins with small releases. Notice tension in the body and soften it. Notice the mind gripping an outcome and loosen. Notice the mind fighting something that already happened and accept it. Not because you like it, but because it is already true. These small releases train you for larger ones. And gratitude plus surrender together create what Buddhism calls equanimity, a centered steadiness that does not depend on perfect conditions. A woman caring for her mother with Alzheimer's discovered this during one of the hardest periods of her life. Some days were heartbreaking, she said, but I learned to find moments of gratitude even there. For my mother's occasional smile, for caregivers who were genuinely compassionate, for my own capacity to love. And she had to surrender the expectation that her mother would remain the same person she always was. When I stopped fighting the disease and started meeting my mother wherever she was that day, she said, our relationship became peaceful again. Different, but still beautiful. In letting go, you often find what you were looking for, not by getting what you wanted, by discovering what you actually needed was always available. Peace does not come from controlling circumstances. It comes from accepting them. Love does not come from possessing people. It comes from appreciating them as they are. Security does not come from guaranteeing outcomes. It comes from trusting your ability to handle what arises. The dance between gratitude and surrender creates a life of grace instead of struggle. You appreciate what is here while staying open to what is changing. You work toward goals while holding outcomes lightly. You care deeply while staying free from rigid demands. You live fully while accepting that everything is temporary. This is not a finish line. It is a practice. Some days you will dance well. Other days you will find yourself fighting, and you will need to remember to soften again. What matters is returning to gratitude, returning to surrender, returning to the present moment. Right now, there is something in your life asking for gratitude. Something simple you may be taking for granted. And there is something asking for surrender. Some expectation you are gripping that is creating tension. What would happen if you softened around both? What would happen if you stopped fighting and joined the dance? The music has been playing all along, and here you are, having traveled far, arriving again at the most profound destination of all. This moment, exactly as it is, the Buddha taught that all seeking eventually leads home to what was never lost. You did not need to travel anywhere to find peace. You needed to remember that peace is your natural state. You did not need to become someone else to experience love. You needed to recognize that love is already within you, waiting to be lived. And tonight, in Zen drift sleep, you do not need to force anything. Let the body settle. Let the breath continue. Let the mind loosen. Let sleep come as another kind of surrender, natural, quiet, inevitable.